This video is a remake of a Photoshop tutorial which I've seen, which was done by Spoon Graphics. It's a very good video, and it does, as I freely admit, work better on Photoshop than I've been able to do it in Affinity Photo. But I'll give it my best shot, and hopefully maybe you might be able to adapt it and get better results than I have. Now, it's to sort of make this lava type text. Now, I have also tried to do this in Affinity Designer, but there's some steps in that which I couldn't quite replicate. Maybe someone who's better with Affinity Designer can do a workaround, but I've only really been able to do this well in Affinity Photo, so I will stick to Affinity Photo. Now, there are two ways of doing this. You can start with a font, whatever font you want, and then we can change to the liquify persona and sort of drag out these drips from the bottom of the text, or you can start with a font that already has drips on it. This particular one was called Double Feature. I'm not certain whether it's part of Affinity Photo or whether it's one that I've downloaded, and if it is, it must be a free one because I've never paid for any font, so I either use what comes with the program or I download free ones. So it's called Double Feature if you want to try this one here. So let me shut these down. Now, another thing you will also need is an image with some raindrops on some glass or something. You can get this on, or other ones, online. I got this one from Pixabay.com, and I will be adding the link to this to the description of this video. So we need a new document. Size is really up to you, but I've done 3000 pixels by 2000 pixels, and the DPI I'm going to leave at 144. So I'll just click OK. So I have two versions of this, and what I'm going to do at the start of this, I'm going to do two versions, one with a text that I'm going to have to liquify and one which has already got drips. So first thing we want to do is to add a new layer, and I'm going to flood fill this layer. Now what we want is a very dark black, but not quite black, grey I should say, but not quite black. And the one I'm going for is the hex code is 070707. Now the reason for this is that we're going to put some drop shadows on the letters, and which is going to be black, so you want that to show up a bit. So if the background isn't totally black, that will show up a bit better. So let me do the same on this one here. Add a new layer and make that 070707. Right, so those two are the same so far. So now we need a font, so I'm going to come to the artistic text tool, and I'm going to make the fill color white, and then I'm just going to draw out a letter and then type, let's start with lava. Alright, let me just highlight this text, and then I'm going to just change the font, which is the one I used before, Henry Penny, and then I'll just use the move tool to position that in the middle. Right, so let's go back to this other one, come to the text tool, make sure white is the color for the fill. highlight this one and use double feature, and then just come to the move tool and center that. So now I have the two different types of text, one already dripping and the one that isn't dripping. So we now want to make this level look like the letters are dripping down. Now if I try and go to the liquify persona now, I should get an error message because it has to be a pixel layer. So what I need to do is right click this and come to rasterize, so it will make this into a pixel layer, and then I can come to the liquify persona and I can now make these letters look like they are dripping down. So I've got this on the liquify push forward tool, and I'm just going to sort of come to an area here and just make this look like it's dripping down. How much you do this is really up to you. I'm not going to go too mad, but you get the idea. Just, this one's a bit too thick. Right. Right, that'll do for that. So once I'm happy, I'll just click apply, and if I go back to the other one, I don't have to do anything with this because it's already got the drips on it, so I don't have to rasterize it, so this text is still sort of vector. So that is the text part of it ready and in position. So from here on in, everything else will be the same. So I'm just going to stick to working on this one here. If you wanted to carry on, with your text that you've liquefied, that is up to you, but the steps from here on in are exactly the same, whether it's the vector text or the rasterized text. So now we want to add effects to this layer, so I will just click on the FX button that's down here, and we'll just move it slightly out of the way. The first one we're going to go to is a gradient overlay, so I'm going to put a tick in that, click on the word gradient overlay to give me the options. Now we're going to change from the standard black and white, so I'm going to click on this box here to open up the gradient options, and the biggest circle at the end here is the one that's currently selected, so black is currently selected. So if I click in the color box here, now I'm using the RGB hex sliders because I'm going to enter a hex number here, and that hex number is EF1C10, which gives me this sort of reddy orange color. And then I'm going to click on the node at the other end, and again click in the color box, and the hex code I'm going to put in here is FEE949. And then I'm going to change the angle of this to pointing straight up, so the redder color is at the bottom and the yellow color is at the top. So that is the gradient done, and you don't have to stick with those colors. If you want a more yellow or a more orangey color, I will leave that up to you. So the next thing we want is inner glow, so I'm going to put a tick in inner glow, then click on the word to get the options. Now with this we're going to change the blend mode from screen to multiply, and we're going to change the color from white to black, and the opacity is going to be down to about 30% roughly. Radius will be up in the high 70 or lower 70s, so if we go to 73 roughly. It's easier to type these in than trying to. Let's go with 73, and the intensity is 83. Which will give us this sort of darker outline around the edges here. The next thing we want is an inner shadow, so I'll click on the tick in there, then click on the options. I'm going to change the blend mode from multiply to overlay. I'm going to leave the color black. Opacity I'm going to leave at 50%. And the radius is going to be 50. The offset I'm going to leave at 0, and intensity is going to be 80. And the angle is going to be 135, which is virtually the opposite direction from where it was. So the next thing after that we want is the bevel and emboss. So I'm going to tick on that, and then on the options. Now starting from the bottom here, I'm going to change the shadows. So I click on this black box here. I'm going to change the shadows to overlay, the blend mode, and I'm going to reduce this down to about 20%. 21, that's close enough. Now the highlights, click on this box here. I'm going to change the blend mode to color dodge and increase the opacity to about 80%. Now where this dot is, I'm going to change the azimuth to 120, and the elevation I'm going to change to 60. I'm going to put a tick into invert, and then I'm going to increase the radius to 13 pixels, and I might just add a slight bit of softening, 1 or 2 pixels, just to soften those edges slightly. That's close enough, 2 pixels. So the next thing I want to do is add some 3D effect. So put a tick into 3D, click on the word to get the options. Now the radius I'm going to raise from the default of 5 up to 31 roughly, there or thereabouts, 30.4, that's close enough. And I'm going to increase the spectacular right up to 100, and I'm going to reduce the shininess down to about 30. Depends on how shiny you want this to look. But around the 25 to 30 mark. Let's leave that on 26 on this particular one. And so I can now close this, and we will be coming back to this, but I'll close this for now. So as you can see, we're starting to get that shiny sort of glossy look to it. But now we want the raindrop image. So if I just come to this image here, and I will right click this and come to copy, that one, and then edit and paste that layer above the other layer. And I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to darken. Now you can see where the bubbles are inside the lettering, so you can resize, reposition. So if you want more bubbles in one letter or less, or you can do this however you want. You just bring this down a bit. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Or all the letters have got quite a few bubbles in them. Now you can leave the opacity at 100, or you can, if you want a more subtler look, you can drop this down. I'm going to come down to about 90% in the opacity. So now I just want to add a bit of sharpening to this raindrop layer, so I'm going to come up to filters, sharpen and unsharp mask, then click apply, just leave it on the default settings, and then I want to add a bit of noise, so I'm going to again come up to filters, noise and add noise, and I'm going to come up almost to 100% on uniform and with monochromatic ticked. This would be sort of to add some small bubbles in the background. Once you click apply, a lot of these will sort of disappear and be much more noticeable before you click apply than after you click apply. So if you feel that that is not really showing up enough, you can go back to filters and you could do repeat, add noise, just to add a bit more noise, just so that those smaller bubbles are a bit more noticeable. But you don't have to do the repeat thing, it's up to you. It's with your personal taste. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight the text layer, and I'm going to come up to the select menu and do selection from layer. So it should then put the marching ends outline around each of the letters. I'm then going to come to the top layer and highlight that, and I'm going to add a layer mask to this, and what this will do, it will help hide those bubbles that may be shown through on the background but that are not included inside the letters. So I'll just click on this icon here to add a layer mask, and then I can press Ctrl and D to remove the marching ends. So hopefully now there should be no bubbles visible outside of the text. Right, next we want to come to the highlighting the bottom layer, and sorry, highlighting the text layer, sorry, my mistake, I'm reading the wrong bit here. And I'm going to click on the effects options again, and now we're going to add the outer shadow. So put a tick into outer shadow, tick on the words to give me the options, and this is why we made the background slightly off of black, because the shadow is going to be black. I'm going to leave it on black, and I'm going to have the angle on 0, which is actually pointing to the right there, and I'm going to have the radius on 27 and the offset on 8 and the intensity on 95. I'm hoping you can just see that sort of darker outline there. We can increase the opacity of that if you want it to show for a bit more, but around the 65 mark in opacity. So now I can close this again. So you will be able to see this a bit better after the next step, which is sort of to add a sort of light behind the text. So now I'm going to highlight the bottom layer, and then I'm going to add a new pixel layer between the grey background and the text. Come to the paintbrush tool, and I need white, so I'm going to change the colours back to black and white. Make sure that white is the foreground colour, and you need a brush that's got 0 hardness and quite big. This might be a bit too big. Let's reduce this down in size a bit. So I'm going to put a light source sort of behind there, and another one about there, let's say. Come off of this tool, and then I'm just going to lower the opacity of this down to around the 50% mark, just so it helps you see that black outline that we put around the letter in there. So the last thing I'm going to do is just to highlight the top layer, and then I'm going to add an adjustment of HSL, which is hue, saturation and luminosity, and I'm going to increase the saturation about 60%. If you go too far, I mean, if you go right up to 100, it's still not that bad, but I'm going to come up to about 60% there. And basically that is the end of the look at this, how to do this lava type text. Personally, I think it's better if you use a text that's already looking like it's dripping, unless you're very good with the liquify persona tools, which I personally am not. I think it looks much better if you have a text that's already dripping, like this double feature text that I've used here. I'm not 100% certain how or where you could use this particular design or what have you, but hopefully you will learn something from actually trying it out. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.